Section 1 of Poetry, a Magazine of Verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. My Country, by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. They were my people, and this country was my country. Deep ravines send strange shadows into the valley. Rock ridges bulwark returning ferns and flowers. Rock towers watch the invading shadows. Hills mother children. Hills watch while children sleep. Fathomed in coulees, the spirit waterfalls say all there is to say. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Native, by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. There ain't no poetry like these middling hills and a slow stream gurgling over stones. Them pines has lived 400 years and asked nothing of no one. Straight and tall and strong, nothing crooked about a pine. Religion, I call it, pointing to the sky and slinging incense free. Did you ever hear a Cedar Valley moan a dirge or sing an anthem? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Nothin, Somethin, by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. It ain't worth nothing as land goes, and yet it's something. Kinda nice. A hill of boulders smiling in the sun. I only took it because 'twas cheap. I wasn't one of them that had the earning guts to pick and choose. My girl and I have worked to coax the crops around these stones. She was pretty once, Lord. Now her bones stick out like rich balls in a tent. I ain't complaining. The land, she'd say it wasn't any good, except to hold the world together. It's held her and me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Howard Bentley, by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. Jim Burgentine said if any other man had tried to put over a plug hat in this western burg, he'd have been egged. Howard Bentley didn't follow fashion. He brought his hat from Massachusetts. It was a good hat and lasted 40 years. For the matter of that, 8 months of the calendar he didn't wear a hat. He never did unnecessary things. He split a cracker if the scales tipped over a pound. He split a cracker if the scales tipped under a pound. When a neighbor was sick, he sat up nights and took the orphans home. $25,000 earned in his corner grocery were scattered about the country among the struggling farmers. Howard Bentley died without trying to collect. He never said unnecessary words. He was a quiet man. No tombstone shouts his name above the sod. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Grandad's Bluff by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Mapstone. I knelt all day, Grandad, pleading with you, but you had nothing to say. Night fell, and a message came through your ravines. It did not speak either, but I heard it pass among the leaves of the trees. I drank it through my nostrils as one drinks wine through the mouth, and it tingled to the fingertips of my spirit. I came to you, Grandad, with my heart. God bless you, Grandad. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. In Mist by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Mapstone. When you can see the ground's breath, and the sky goes muggy, and drops before the world like a perspiring window glass, when beasts and humans creep to cover, and the steamboats speak fog language, farm buildings sit still, folding their hands, as if they hadn't a thing in the world to do. A chimney's belch smudges into nothing. The earth's breath noses around the roots of trees. Heaven mist seeps through branches and wraps the country's heart. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Light Magic by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. The valley curves like a bridge spanned to the sky. Blue granite stewpans spill pink begonias along the road. The town hall, blazing red, focuses the red stubble of the fields, which stretch away to gold-stacked corn stalks in Wisconsin hills, piled cubes of red and yellow. The sunset catches the landscape in layers. Its amber floats a banner of pastels around the town. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Late Autumn in the Hills by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. A flock of birds spurts down the trail of autumn. Bare hills wrap fog blankets about them and nod. A whirl of wind scatters wild rice over the lake. There is a shake of snow in the air. My boat moors in the sedges. My hand droops over the side of the boat. My fingers touch a lotus pod. The seeds rattle in the husk. Autumn is anchored. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Season by Laura Sherry. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. It is mating time. How can I go gypsying? It is planting time. How can I go adventuring? It is harvest time. In the twilight, the campfire smolders. On the hearthstone, ashes hold memories. It is dying time. In the unknown road. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Laughter by Emmy Veronica Sanders. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. See, I thrust at you laughter, clusters of pomegranate in the sun. See, I dangle clusters of red sun-ripened laughter before your eyes, that are colorless, like the eyes of the fishes. What are you peering at? Sallow face. Your hand. It's limp and clammy. It has never clutched at a thing, strongly. Those pale pinched lips of yours have never blossomed under kisses, have never whispered little words, luminous with tenderness. Wretched one, my laughter, let it shake you like a wind, red wind, tearing to shreds your pale hypocrisy. My laughter, let it thaw those boulders of black ice, your hard moralities, your bleak utilities, and sow violets in their place. There is laughter ringing softly from the golden shell of the sky. There is laughter ringing in the rills that comes tripping down the bronze and purple hillside, insolently. Trees are swaying to and fro, laughter in the rustle and the flitter of their leaves, and the air is warm and tremulous with laughter, rising from the lips that lie, mute beneath tombstones. Deaf one, listen to the scarlet wind. There are sobs in the wind. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Into These Things by Emmy Veronica Sanders. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. The grasp of their hands has grown cold. Furnaces needed. Red fire. Their little souls, their cowardly cramped souls, bigness went, to steel and to stone. Slow and feeble their breath. Do you hear the white steam, panting? There is no music in their hearts. Engines no rhythm. Engines make loudness. If their eyes are without longing, do not numbers create themselves? And if their lips show not the deep proud curve of passion, are not cities passionate? Furnaces, steel towers, engines, cities, and the pale-eyed people crawling, emptied, into these things. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Passing by Emmy Veronica Sanders. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. I am tired of roads. I am tired of the going, and I am tired of passing people. In the east, a narrow streak of gold, and the flutter of wings of the little desires, bleakness of snow in the north, and in the south, the taste of ashes on hot lips, westward a loneliness, roads over sand, and roads over snow, and roads across rivers. I am tired of roads. I am tired of the going, and I am tired of passing people. I am tired of passing them on the glistening pavements under the lamplight, and in the places where you order things to eat. I am tired of passing them at noon under the flat stare of the sun, and in the streetcars, the elevated trains and the taxis, passing glances and feet passing, feet of 6 million people passing and gliding by, shuffling and jostling by, passing, and those that pass on the screen in the movies, and the people that pass, slowly, hurriedly, with a half-caught jest, through the pages of books. I am tired of the winds that hasten by, and of the little waves that skip, and never once look back, and of the stars, coming and going, fleeting glimpses, hands fluttering past like autumn leaves. I am tired of roads. I am tired of the going, and I am tired of passing people. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Hill Speech by Emmy Veronica Sanders. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. I listened to the hills as they spoke at nightfall. I listened to the haughty calm flowing of blind speech, and to vehement words, jagged and bitten into the sky face. I saw hieroglyphics scrawled on a pale wall of sky, with fingers of granite. There was a motion gripping the masses, urging and waving, onward. I heard cadences of hill speech, falling and rising, softly, with soothing interference. And there was one standing alone, on the smoldering horizon, standing aloof and detached, always, saying I, and I, and I, answering no, and no, and no, always, to the biting words, and to the flowing line speech, and to the hieroglyphics scrawled with fingers of granite. There was one, saying no, to the dull grey abysses of sky and of sea, saying no, to the masses. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
All Roads Lead to Rome by Louis Grudin. Read for LibriVox.org by Mapstone. She bore the smear of insult on her face, and heard the ruffian voices and the din of penny horns and whistles that had been her heart, and she knew only this disgrace, that one had dressed her in a ragged gown. Caesar had been met in various ways, like thought too vast to feel or to erase. She knew the hosts of Rome were sweeping down. In various fashions Caesar had been met, with crimson violence or more brilliant lies, the poisoned fang or chain of chariot. She did not choose, but slain by her surprise, she could not see the choice that waited yet, the veiled derisive plebeian disguise. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Jest by Louis Grudin. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. In a gutter between wind-bitten glaciers, a little man stands blowing upon a toy. Is he not mad? Is he not audacious? In such a curious place, in such employ? The wind's blue insult swells upon his face. A whisking hunger, like a mouse at bay, has cowed his eyes, which vaguely in disgrace bear up the heavy menace of Broadway. A dim presentiment of an awful hoax scalded his heart and simmered to his feet. The secret jest that counted off the strokes of hours men spent at various tasks secrete, that made of some of them quite obvious jokes, and saved for others labors more discreet. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Anguish by Sally Bruce Kinsolving. Read for LibriVox.org by Larry Wilson. Pain is cutting through my heart like a thin knife, with the keen abiding smart men call life. Pillowed cool in marble state, ah, let me sleep, and afar from love or hate, bury me deep. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Duet by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. Out of my sorrow I'll build a stair, and every tomorrow will climb to me there, with ashes of yesterday in its hair. My fortune is made of a stab in the side, my debts are paid in pennies of pride, little red coins in a heart I hide. The stones that I eat are ripe for my needs, my cup is complete with the dregs of deeds. Clear are the notes of my broken reeds. I carry my pack of aches and stings, light with the lack of all good things, but not on my back because of my wings. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. At the Hospital for the Insane by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. They said to me, "We are not crazy, dear, but they are mad, and so they keep us here." I thought, we are all mad in this walled place, and out beyond, and through all time and space, save he who looks his madness in the face. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Song Overheard by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. I wrote your name within my heart most carefully. I never could remember names or faces, and then one day I lost my heart along the shining places. I must have let it fall, plucking a flower I did not want, and listening to a bird I did not see. Now would I call, and you would answer me. Do hearts have wings? I am so careless about losing things. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Kind Fate by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. You strike at hearts of gentle ways, and in their grief they give you praise. Once you struck at me, and will not strike again. You do not like to bruise your hands on hearts that hoard their bright, hard pain. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Stronghold by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. Here he lies, under the solemn stones, secure from life a little while, old Death, with his ready smile, busy among his bones. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Looking On by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. I urged my mind against my will. My will shook like a rocking wall, but did not fall. My mind was like a wind-swept tree, and neither knew the victory. I dashed my mind against my will. They did not break or bend or spill, but in my heart the songs grew still. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Truth About a Lie by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. I lied, trusting you knew. I could not lie to you. Beloved friend, I lied and am forgiven, but I cannot forgive that you believed my lie. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Couplets by Leonora Speyer. Read for LibriVox.org by Winnifred Assmann. Forest fires. Summer is burning, from trees' red crown, ashes of June pour hotly down. Night of stars. They crowded round me more and more. I had to shove to shut the door. Ascent. Mountains take too much time. Start at the top and climb. Reproach. You gave me wings to fly, then took away my sky. Down to the heights. In the deep valleys and deeper still, I found my heights against my will. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Lamentation by Iris Berry. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. Chrysanthemums and late roses, and the plain leaves fall. All that is left us now. Hoarsely the flower girls cry. Pale shake the street lamp lights. Chilled gusts come puffing by. Sigh the poor year away. All that is left us now. Regrets without perfume. Dead thoughts. Chrysanthemums and late roses. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Virgin Moon by Iris Berry. Read for LibriVox.org by Andrea Krayer. Having chattered out the overbrimming of their light hearts, when the old moon had traveled over the housetops far enough to dangle dancing shadows of leaves. Across their bed, veils of silence also were let down, and they slept, virgin beside virgin. The whisper of leaves outside the window filled the room, long after the moon had trailed her net of shadow boughs across their dreams, and was gone. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. An Unposted Letter by Iris Berry. Read for LibriVox.org by Andrea Krayer. How bitter must the smile of the wise future be behind her veil. O letter of last year, can my hopes and aims, like moons, have changed so? Those dead desires, like shriveled fruits, hang, shamed, on the bough of time. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Nocturne by Iris Berry. Read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. The veil of light slipped from the sky. Only grayness, and in the valley one home light. Not mine. I most remember then shadows of boughs, lattice-wise falling on white walls of my home beneath the moon. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Beauty by Leon Herold. Read for LibriVox.org by Alan Mapstone. Over beauty I am a weeping willow. I begged to God to grant me a look at beauty, and he sent me travelling 1,000,000,000 years to come to this world. I came my way an empty vessel, longing for beauty. I shall go my way fulfilled, glorifying beauty. When I look on beauty, I secure a day's provision. Thus I accumulate food for another 1,000,000,000 years. When I see beauty, it propels wheels in me and puts me in communication with God instantly to thank Him that I am arrived. My only grief in life is to see a thing without beauty. Over beauty I am a weeping willow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
My Wedding by Leon Herold. Read for LibriVox.org by Bruce Kachuk. My adopted little sister dreams, as soon as they heard the wedding news of their brother, shouted, "Brother, our brother, you have cared for and sustained us all our painful lives. For this hour we have been waiting, the hour of our culmination. Brother, you were betrothed when you were born." Then they danced alone to the garden to gather star daisies. Now comes the lady of my heart, in her purple-bordered, lightning-colored gown. The maiden day, in whom I breathe, comes with the sun bouquet at her breast, led by my sister dreams, the maids of honor. And life, the best man, leads me to her. The pagan musicians, ocean and wind, ocean the pianist, with jeweled and manicured fingers, thunders and pounds the wide-ranged keyboard of the shore, and the wind, with hair unbound, holding the violin woods under her chin, thrills my bride and her maids of honor, and life, my best man, and me. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
In Your Eyes by Leon Herold, read for LibriVox.org by Stacey M. To M.H. Never before did I dare to look in your eyes, to see oneself in love's mystic eyes, is leading life in paradise. Creator dreamed and looked deep in space, then being the grace of his dream, began to evolve. Thus he became famous, and God is his name. When the light from my eyes falls in yours, immortal songs will take course, tuneful songs, the grace of my dreams. Leon Herold. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Triad by Arthur H. Nethercott, read for LibriVox.org by Julie. In the Church of St. Pierre, August 1918. Old music wove its beauty through each word which echoed from the chancel down the nave. Old beauty of fled twilights stained each beam, carved like the fingers of some soul in prayer. A woman veiled in black knelt on the stone, the beauty of old suffering on her face. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Walking Poem by Edward Sapir, read for LibriVox.org by Agnes Robert Behr. I believe there is moving more than colored jackets down the street among the city rackets. I do not think the sun rain on the corner wall is all. I cannot think the swirl is much more than a little touch of souls too steady to an equipoise their private thunderings, the subterranean noise. For I have gathered scowl and elbow thrust, and glint of pupil of the eye. There must, I think, be lashing foam in canyons under there, and this a heavy silence on the little empty air. I do not think her ankles mincing through, and round smile, are the flowers that we thought we knew. Red jacket, stealthy lioness yawning in the wood, and stealthy passion creeping in the blood. The sun moves, and the colors of the air. I think each canyon river keeps it flowing there, within the deepest constancy. Call then the sun in jacket's pageantry. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Little Deity Alone in the Desert by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. My life is here, a contemplation of slow days and distant women. Women standing in the skyline as if about to turn into their shawls and leave their doorways. The illimitable movement of my hand across the desert contrives against their motions and my being. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Late Winter by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. The duller plains of dawn near this great abbey of bare fruit trees, hesitant, afoot upon the sill. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. A Requiem for the Memory of Bees. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. Lake Michigan. A brown flowering tree on twilight was but a farther spinning of the sprinkled blackbirds. A woman walking, the evening dying, her dress among low blossoms. Among low blossoms, lake water humming. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Chicago Spring by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. Before returning to Santa Fe, I walk on the streets before nightfall, the lake clear and still between young leaves. My body is gentle as the light on the pavement. My fingers play on the air like evening wind running in leaves. But there is no one, only return, only old roads of last summer, an old fence like dead leaves. The hand of God is heavier than mountains. It stands on the air like an odor. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Old Spring by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. The flowering crab trees have melted like the twilights. Here a brown road, dull amid bark shadows, and an old man walking, and between the woods the dandelions like dried scattered leaves. But in my country the spring is old. The violet and red are laid in earth, will not be lost, and I there standing or moving slowly. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Silent Days by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. Here men go in and out of doors, and women stand beneath dry trees. A child drifts and is still. With brevity men break a bitter bread. My books are fallen leaves. I, unidentified, as books passed by at will. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Lament beside an Ezekiel for the wife of Awa-Tsireh by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. Two cavalieros, smooth in the valley, laughed. Their horses barked, the summer foaming. San Ildefonso in colors, faint as dust, flower-dripping dancers. One cannot think so far away, and thinking women die. O Awa-Tsireh, the faded roads may never move. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. The Fragile Season by Ivor Winters. Read for LibriVox.org by Ehsan Ahmed. The scent of summer thins. The air grows cold. One walks alone and chafes one's hands. The fainter aspens thin to air. The dawn is frost on roads. This ending of the year is like the lazy ending of a last year's leaf, turned up in silence. Air gives way to cold. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Mea Culpa by Harriet Monroe, from Poetry, a Magazine of Verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by our own Bernstein. With this number, poetry completes a decade. October 1st, it will be 10 years old. The eve of one's birthday may be the appropriate moment for reflection and more or less penitential confession. Mea culpa, so the orthodox confession begins. With a humble mind must one approach the sacred closet. And the mood is not difficult, considering how frequently we are prodded towards humility. You have wasted a great opportunity, writes one correspondent. You are possibly 5% better than the century, says another, no less trenchant in authority than Ezra Pound. I have loved poetry, but your disparagement of the great Rostand makes me wish I had a 5-year subscription to withdraw, deposes a third. Will you never stop dealing out free verse and pretending it is poetry, cries a fourth, and a fifth complains that only the rhymer's tinkle rings through our pages now. All this, and much more, on the artistic side. Of course, we might put up a defense, set forth our manifold achievements, but that would not be fitting in a penitent, and the editor realizes only too deeply the magazine's many errors and derelictions. Whatever it has done for the cause, unquestionably it might have done much more under the all-wise guidance of complete and perfect competence. But it is on the business side that the editor is most sincerely penitent and humble. Here, somehow or other, we have indeed missed our opportunity. We have not persuaded the poetry-loving public to subscribe sufficient numbers to support the magazine. 10 years ago, our guarantors, more than 100 they were then, accepted the responsibility of a rash experiment for the benefit of an art then neglected and decried. It seemed reasonable to hope that within 5 years a circulation of 10,000 or more would assure the magazine's continuance by making it modestly self-supporting. Now that twice 5 years have passed, there is still no prospect of the fulfillment of this hope. The future of the magazine is precarious because it still rests on the generosity and continued loyalty of its guarantors. The editor accuses herself. If she had a small modicum of ordinary business instinct, she might have found a larger audience and rallied it to the support of the poet's organ. For, imperfect as it may be, poetry is, by general consent, the leading organ of the art in the English-speaking world. There must be at least 10,000 people in this country who would wish to help support this organ if we could reach them and persuade them of their need of it, of the country's need of it. But, unfortunately, we have not known how to reach out and persuade. Small advertising in these days of enormous expenditures for publicity is simply money wasted. Circularizing in these days of overburdened mails doesn't pay for the stamps on the envelopes. Yet the public has become so accustomed to the advertiser's dope that they rely on it like a morphine eater and pay no attention to those who do not supply, in conspicuous and never-ceasing profusion, the artificial stimulants. What is to be done? The editor confesses frankly that she does not know. The magazine ought to go on. It would be bitterly missed. This seems beyond question if one may believe the proofs that come by every mail and the emphatic assurances of people who know the work it is doing. Its influence is out of proportion to its subscription list, because it is widely quoted by the newspapers and is used in extensio by all the innumerable modern anthologists, not to mention the young men and women far and near who receive from it their first stimulus towards artistic expression and feed their souls on it, often in remote corners of this vast country and against formidable spiritual isolation. The editor is tempted to quote here an editorial which appeared in the magazine 8 years ago, this month. By this time, we should have outgrown the need of it, but, mea culpa, it is as true now as it was then. It was entitled, A Word to Our Readers. Are you convinced of the value of our unique experiment for the support and encouragement of a universal and indispensable art? Do you wish the magazine to continue beyond the period for which it is subsidized? Do you wish its policy to be one of increasing liberality towards the poets and their public, working always towards more just appreciation and recompense for the former, and for the latter, a presentation of the best the art has to offer? The permanence of the magazine lies not with us, but with you. Given life and health, we can pledge to its support our best service, and, under the usual limitations of human error, increasing knowledge and efficiency, for there is much education in such work as this. But our labor will not avail for permanence unless we can reach the public for poetry which must exist in this vast country, and in the wide provinces of the English-speaking world. And we cannot find that public unless you help us. We must be advertised by our friends. Other advertising in these days of enormously expensive displays of it is costly and often futile. We have preferred to reserve our endowment funds for our contributors, the poets, in order to increase the intrinsic value of the magazine. The direct advertisement of recommendation is the only possible means of increasing its scope and influence. Thus you, and you alone, can give us really effective aid towards reaching a circulation large enough to enable us to stand alone. You can help us in any or all of the following ways. First, send or renew your own subscription. Second, persuade one or more of your friends and neighbors to subscribe. Third, see that your social and literary clubs subscribe. Fourth, see that the public library in your town carries one or more subscriptions. Fifth, talk about the magazine. Either praise or blame will indicate your interest. To those who wish to give more to the magazine than the amount of their subscription, we extend a cordial invitation to join our body of guarantors. Full guarantors pay $50 a year, or, in a few instances, $100. They receive the magazine each month, as many copies as they order, and full reports once a year. Like members of art institutes and of operatic, dramatic, and orchestral societies, like donors of prizes and scholarships in schools and exhibitions of painting, sculpture, architecture, and music, like these, our guarantors are patrons of a great art, one which, equally with the other arts, needs public encouragement and even endowment if it is to achieve its triumphs. By encouraging the art, by staking something on their faith in those who practice it, they increase their own enjoyment of it, and receive perhaps more than they give, so that the adventure is of mutual benefit. Another way of contributing largely is to offer a prize. This way is recommended especially to clubs. We should like to give as many prizes annually as the Carnegie Institute of Pittsburgh or the Art Institute of Chicago. In this art, an urgent need is for the endowment of scholarships, especially traveling scholarships. The modern world, modern thought and art, is cosmopolitan. A young poet, even more than a young aspirant in the other arts, needs a certain amount of cosmopolitan training and experience. For the lack of it, he may develop narrowly, remaining provincial and laggard-minded. It is an incredible and inexcusable omission that the expensively endowed American Academy at Rome does not include poets among the young artists it subsidizes. Indeed, there are precisely the ones who would perhaps benefit the most by a few years' residence in Rome. The editor has in mind now 3 or 4 promising young poets to whom a scholarship would be of incalculable benefit. Many inspiring words encouraged me while I was explaining the project of the magazine to possible guarantors. One of these, a Chicago lawyer, said, "Of course, put me down. I don't know any better way to pay my debt to Shelley." What do you owe, you who read this article, to Shelley, to Coleridge, Milton, Shakespeare, to Molière, Dante, Sappho, Homer, to all the great poets whose immortal singing has incalculably enriched life, become an integral part of the mind of the race? Have you ever felt an obligation to pay a little of that immeasurable debt? Is there any other way to pay your debt to the great dead poets than by supporting and encouraging the poets now alive? Among them may be the founders of a Renaissance. Among them may be an immortal, in a sense, not only actual and immediate, but permanent, mystic and profound. Their fate is in your hands. Like many another penitent confessing his sins, the editor ends with a nefarious attempt to shift, or at least to share, responsibility. She does not know how to make the magazine self-supporting. Do you? H.M. End of Mea Culpa by Harriet Monroe.
On Translating Chinese Poetry 2. A comment by Eunice Teichens. From Poetry, a Magazine of Verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922. Edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Read by Victoria Burns. Probably, most of us met these poems first in translations by scholars Herbert A. Giles of Cambridge or Legge of Oxford. Legge's translations are in scrupulous prose, Giles in rhymed verse, which Arthur Waley says combines rhyme and literalness with wonderful dexterity. Giles' translations are more widely known, but are now rather scoffed at by many of the newer school of poets. In justice to Giles, however, it must be remembered that at least the greater part of these translations appeared in 1896, before the present movement towards the simplification of poetry was started, and before the English poets themselves had discovered that English may be used with classic simplicity. They are, therefore, in a poetic idiom foreign to our day. But we owe Giles, nonetheless, a great debt of gratitude on this as well as on other scores. In 1913, Helen Wadell published a slender volume, Lyrics from the Chinese, the first translation into English, so far as my knowledge goes, which belong to the new movement in English poetry. They are done from Legge's literal translations, and although they have never been generally known as such, they deserve to be. They seem to me to controvert the claims made by publishers of Amy Lowell's and Flourish Ascot's new volume, Fir Flower Tablets, that this was the first time that an English version of a Chinese poem has been at once the work of a sinologue and a poet. They are, in rhymed verse, as direct as Sarah Tilsday's lyrics, and to me, often very beautiful. Here, for instance, is her version of one of the odes. How they say that Ho is wide, when I could ford it if I tried. How they say that Sung is far away, when I can see it every day. Yet must indeed the Ho be deep, when I have never dared to leap. And since I am content to stay, Sung must be very far away. If one bears in mind the fact that the original is rhymed and patterned, does Miss Lyle's new free verse version, with its American colloquialisms, seem an improvement? Who says the Ho is wide? Why, one little reed can bridge it. Who says that Sung is far? I can stand on tiptoe and see it. Who says the Ho is wide? Why, the smallest boat cannot enter. Who says that Sung is far? It takes not a morning to reach it. L. Cranmer Bing, with his A Lute of Jade and the Feast of Lanterns, struck a more popular chord, and it is perhaps a personal matter. They do not move me as the Waddle translations do. They are partially rhymed and partially unrhymed. To me it seems that they are not quite one thing or the other. neither very good English verse, nor very scrupulous translations. Another interesting, though slightly Latinized volume is Whittle's rendering of the French versions of Judith Gadier's L'Avare de Jabe. And we have had other sorts of translations. The airy snatches from Erza Pound, some years ago, who chose a single image that pleased him from a long poem and gave us that only. The fantasies of E. Powers Mathers, so over-decorated as to be genuinely dishonest. The dreadful Drogel of W.A.P. Martin. The trite and worrisome mouthings of Charles Budd, not to mention the numerous interpretations. Then came Arthur Waley's admirable translations, at once so simple and so scholarly, carrying with them an instant conviction of authenticity. This, we felt, was the substance and spirit of these old poets at last. Yet such is the carping nature of mankind. We no sooner had so much than we began to wish for the magic also. For Miss Whaley's word sense, excellent as it is, still falls short of the ultimate subtlety of magic. It is probably with the hope of restoring this magic that Amy Lowell with Florence Ashka and Witter Berner with Dr. Hung Chang-Hu have now taken up the work. Miss Lowell's book is a welcome addition, since it gives us many new, charming poems in a contemporary technique. Yet I, for one, cannot quite trust Miss Lowell. She has given us so many racial interpretations, Japanese, Indian, and others, which were all essentially herself. When I find that this too reads like her own poems, I doubt their essentially Chinese quality. She has surely too vivid a personality to make a good translator. Mr. Berner's book is not out yet, but from the examples I have seen, it promises to be the most satisfying of the free verse translations in the matter of magic. Such, roughly, is the history of recent attempts to translate Chinese classical poetry into English. Let me give, for comparison, 3 different versions of the same poem. It is by the lady Pan Chang-Yu, chief favorite of the emperor who ruled China BC 36 through 32, and was sent him with a fan by the lady when he had been supplanted by a younger rival. The first translation is by Giles in his History of Chinese Literature. O fair white silk, fresh from the weaver's loom, clear as the frost, bright as the winter snow. See, friendship fashions out of thee a fan, round as the round moon shines in heaven above. At home, abroad, a close companion thou, stirring with every move the grateful gale. And yet I fear, ah me, that autumn chills, cooling the drying summer's torrid rage, will see thee laid neglected on a shelf, all thought of bygone days, like them, bygone. Here is Erza Pound's version. He does not call it a translation of the same from the first Images anthology. O fan white silk, clear as frost on the grass blade. You also are laid aside. And third, Amy Lowell's, from Fir Flower Tablets, glazed silk, newly cut, smooth, glittering, white, as clear, even as frost and snow, perfectly fashioned into a fan. Round, round like the brilliant moon, treasured in my lord's sleeve. Take him out, put in, wave it, shake it, and a little wind flies from it. How often I fear the autumn season's coming, and the fierce, cold wind that scatters the blazing heat, disregarded, passed by, laid in a box alone. Such little time, and the thing of love cast off. Perhaps by comparing the 3, the Western reader may arrive at some idea of what the Chinese poem is like, as a surveyor, by taking 3 slants at a mountain, can measure it. And if he adds thereto a knowledge of the complex form which it is written, he may even get a fairly correct idea. It is a laborious process. But can one who does not read Chinese find it better? End of On Translating Chinese Poetry 2. A comment by Eunice Tidkins.
His Hometown, a review by Harriet Monroe, from Poetry, a magazine of verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Adrian Stevens. Slabs of the Sunburnt West by Carl Sandburg, Harcourt, Brace and Company. The books of this man are piling up. Chicago Poems, Cornhuskers, Smoke and Steel, and now these slabs. All these since that day in 1914 when, unknown to fame, he stormed poetry stores and picked up the first Levinson Prize, thereby exciting a loud hee-haw of protest from the arbiters of taste. Indeed, all these since 1916, when the book was first published. 8 years, and the arbiters of taste have come round, so that 2 of these books have been beprized without arousing their derision. 8 years, and this radical of 1914 is becoming vieux jeu to the young radicals of 1922, who would elbow him out of the Muses' presence, even as he unwittingly elbowed out Neihardt and George Sterling and Madison Cowain. What of this 4th book? Does it keep up the pace? Well, any book which contains The Windy City and Washington Monument by Night cannot be said to show a flagging of poetic energy. The former is more compact, more definitely planned and shaped than either Prairie or Smoke and Steel, and it carries its big subject throughout with an assured and easy power. It is perhaps too early to say whether it contains passages of such imaginative intensity as a few in these other 2 long poems. For example, the finale of Prairie with the line, "The past is a bucket of ashes." But it does achieve a certain splendour. It is a magnificent interpretation of a great modern town, with all her imperfections on her head, and all her glories too. Let us examine this modern ode, the poet's latest word about Chicago as hog butcher of the world, was his earliest. The early poem had the forthright directness of a powerful etching done in a few bold lines. The second swings a big brushful of colour, puts in background and foreground, light and shadow, shapes up a balanced composition on a large canvas. We see the lean hands of wagon men shaping the junk of the earth to a new city. We see how the junk stood up into skyscrapers. We hear the red men naming, quote, "the place of the skunk, the river of the wild onion smell, Chicago," end quote. And later the poet commands, quote, "lash yourself to the bastion of a bridge and listen while the black cataracts of people go by, baggage, bundles, balloons, listen while they jazz the classics," end quote. And this is what we hear, quote, "Since when did you kiss yourself in? And who do you think you are? Come across, kick in, loosen up. Where do you get that chatter? Beat up the short-change artists. They never did nothing for you. How do you get that way? Tell me, and I'll tell the world. I'll say so. I'll say it is. You're trying to crab my act. You poor fish. You mackerel. You ain't got the sense God gave an oyster. It's raining. What you want is an umbrella." And, "Hush, baby, it ain't how old you are, it's how old you look. It ain't what you got, it's what you can get away with." And, "Tell 'em, honey, ain't it the truth, sweetheart? Watch your step. You said it. You said a mouthful. We're all a lot of damn four-flushers." End quote. The American temperament is there, American good humour joshing itself in a slouching march movement of slang. We feel a big poet spirit going along with the founding of the city and the lifting up of the living lighted skyscrapers, going along with all the man-sized jobs that changed a few huts on a marsh into a great modern town. And there is a large broom, Sweeping irony for the comfortable people who profit by these labours in their smoothly ordered lives, and for the superior people who criticise the results. Quote, "It is easy to listen to the haberdasher customers hand each other their easy chatter. It is easy to die alive, to register a living thumbprint and be dead from the neck up. It is easy to come here a stranger and show the whole works, write a book, fix it all up. It is easy to come and go away a muddle-headed pig, a bum, and a bag of wind." End quote. And then the spirit of the city rises and shakes off these little encumbrances with a grin. Quote, "Chicago fished from its depths a text, independent as a hog on ice." End quote. That grotesque old saying was as familiar as Yankee Doodle in my childhood, for my father found it a beloved simile. Applied to Chicago, it is a true text, in spite of the seeming sensitiveness of local pride, and like other grotesques, flirting for an instant their rags of scarlet, it trails the purple shadow of tragedy. Quote, "Forgive us if the monotonous houses go mile on mile along monotonous streets out to the prairies, if the faces of the houses mumble hard words at the streets and the street voices only say, 'Dust and bitter wind shall come. Forgive us if.'" End quote. There are many ifs, especially, quote, "Forgive us if we work so hard and the muscles bunch clumsy on us, and we never know why we work so hard, if the big houses with little families and the little houses with big families sneer at each other's bars of misunderstanding. Pity us when we shackle and kill each other, and believe at first we understand, and later say we wonder why." End quote. And out of it all, beauty beaten out of the innumerable, desperate, dreamful shifts of change. Quote, "The library building named after Krayer, naked as a stock farm silo, light as a single eagle feather, stripped like an airplane propeller, takes a path up. Too cool, new rivets say. Maybe it is morning. God knows. Put the city up, tear the city down, put it up again. Let us find a city. Let us remember the little violet-eyed man who gave all, praying, 'Dig and dream and hammer till your city comes.' Every day the people sleep and the city dies. Every day the people shake loose, awake, and build the city again." And, "I will die as many times as you make me over again," says the city to the people. End quote. So the poet goes on to mention proud things. There is a high pride throughout the poem, as well as the hog-on-ice independence of the man who cares not whether all the world decries and defames. Proud things such as, quote, "The jackknife bridge opening, the ore boats, the wheat barges passing through, 3 overland trains arriving the same hour, a carload of shorthorns." End quote. And the final section of the poem is an invocation to the winds, the city's fierce-breathing blessing and bane. Quote, "Winds of the windy city, winds of corn and sea blue, spring wind white and fighting winter grey, come home here, they nickname a city for you." End quote. The winds of Chicago are in the poem. It has a big, sweeping, generous movement. It goes, and it goes forward. Washington Monument by Night is one of the author's finest lyrics, and that is saying a great deal. At the Gates of Tombs has something of the sad, grotesque humour we remember in Losers, and we linger a minute with Primer Lesson and the closing lines of Harsk, Harsk, but the rest of the book seems loosely put together. The Unknown Soldier poem, And So Today, says nothing new or in a new manner. Surely there was a subject here, but this serves up what we all read in the newspapers. As for the title poem, in the second section, it succeeds at first in suggesting something of the exalted but flabbergasting bewilderment as of a man knocked cold by sublimity, which overwhelms many a tourist at his first view of the Grand Canyon of Arizona. The interview with God, and the summing up of man's absurd incompetence are not bad. Through their rough-and-tumble humour, one feels the deeper, inexpressible emotion. But the mood thins out, lifting again for only the final lyric, which is fine. Perhaps Mr. Sandberg hasn't stayed long enough as yet in the sunburnt far west. He doesn't feel it as deeply as he does his own windy city. H.M. End of His Hometown, a review by Harriet Monroe. Muriel Stewart, a review by Marion Strobel, from Poetry, a Magazine of Verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Adrian Stevens. The Cockpit of Idols by Muriel Stewart, Methuen and Company Limited, London. Courage and passion blow out the structure of these poems. The initial idea is slight, as in the heart-rending tale of war, it's rose time here, and sometimes fantastic, as in The Centre's Love. But always it is handled with sureness, with a high fearlessness, and passion is always there, sweeping each poem along, farther and farther away from the commonplace. There is never any sentimentality, even with such a subject as the bastard. Miss Stewart manages to keep gloriously free of this customary feminine weakness. This poem, like most of the others, is too long to quote in its entirety. Quote, "Here thou art safe as roses in the bud, safe from the wind that will not spare the rose. Here thou art daily and divinely fed on holy wine and bread, that none deny, my body and my blood. I housel thee, myself the sacrament, and I am great with thee, as souls with God." Continues, "Lie still awake, thy beauty builds my shame, the shame thou dost so innocently bring. At thy beseeching blood, my blood grows tame, my body makes my own most wearisome, and with thy kindling lips my lips become colder. Within me something daily dies. Yet, oh, most sweet, I do not quarrel thee, for more desired thou art than chastity. Closer thou art than eyelids over eyes, than kissing lips or clasping hands can be. As flame with flame, as tide with tide thou art. Nearer, much nearer than myself to me. I carry heaven beneath my labouring heart." End quote. In The Cockpit of Idols, a young priest converses with a harlot, a melodramatic theme, yet it justifies itself, because here again Miss Stewart is sure in her treatment and unfaltering in her courage. And the inevitable and obvious end, when the priest says, quote, "I walked with God in every noisy street, and saw in every creature that passed by Christ go forth too, and mingle with the crowd." End quote. Though weak, is forgiven, because of such lines as, "In the dim church the warm deep-bosomed air swelled on remembered music, whose last note yearned in the organ's throat." End quote. The shorter poems are like charming asides, which are not unusual, but linger because of the directness of their appeal. For instance, Common Fires, quote, "The fern and flame had fought and died together. From fading front the failing smoke crept grey. The heath drew close her old brown shawl of heather and turned her face away. Today the bee no bell of honey misses. The birds are nesting where the bracken lies, green, tranquil, deep, quiet as dreams or kisses on weary lips and eyes. The heath has drawn the blackened threads together. My heart has closed her lips upon old pain. But somewhere in my heart and in the heather no bud shall grow again." End quote. Marion Strobel. End of Muriel Stewart, a review by Marion Strobel. Tranquil Tunes, a review by Marion Strobel. From Poetry, a magazine of verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Adrian Stevens. Cross Currents by Margaret Widemer, Harcourt, Brace and Company. A pleasant and well-mannered collection which has what might be termed a stage presence, for the fundamental idea of each poem, and all of them have an idea, though seldom a very original one, is put across with authority. Miss Widemer is no novice. Her ear is keenly attuned to the popular taste, sometimes too keenly attuned, for occasionally she overdoes her effort to please. And her verses become as conventionally sentimental as the Blue Danube Waltz. It is as though she shouted to her audience, "Stay with me! I have pleased you. I can please you still more." And as a proof of it, she offers wisdom. Quote, "I wonder, was it well that you should lift your hand and call me from the withered ring I thought was fairyland? For where I heard the pipes and flutes, now I can only hear a little sad wind blowing, a little wind of fear. And where I saw wild banners wing gold-purple in the sky, I see the world where sorry folk with heavy hearts go by. Oh, it is true, but oh, the cruel hand that called me from the withered ring I thought was fairyland." End quote. However, there are several poems as mild as the above, and though we look in vain for unusual wording or rhythm or for an arresting simile, nevertheless the poems have a charm of simplicity. They are clear-cut, an emotion, though at times a superficial one, is there, and in a number of instances, most of which are to be found under the subdivision about living, there is delicacy of feeling, knowledge of life, and sweetness without sentimentality. For instance, Liberation. Quote, "I used to think I mattered so, that when I laughed and when I cried, the sun and stars would turn to know if what I asked for was denied. I did not know of this my pride, nor how my thoughts with stars were strung. Such stately dreams God lets us ride, when we are innocent and young. Instead of dancing down my spring, oh, I went grave and watchfully. They seem so very great a thing, my ways to life and hers to me. How good it is to go so free, to let all stars and sceptres fall, for nothing matters now to me, who do not matter now at all." End quote. Miss Widemer speaks many times of God and heaven, two words which do not appear in modern poetry, and her belief that He is so serviceable and so kind is in itself refreshing and an interesting contrast to the popular pagan cry. Marion Strobel. End of Tranquil Tunes, a review by Marion Strobel.
One Poet Speaks for Himself, a review by Pearl Andelson. From Poetry, a magazine of verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Magpie Shadow by E4 Winters, Musterbrook House, Chicago. E4 Winters is one of the rare American poets who are active critically and whose theories are not laid by during the creative process. With him, art is sacrosanct. Therefore, he says, let us discover the nature of this art. His first book, The Immobile Wind, was an inquiry and an answer. The elementary thought, what Croce calls the intuition, forms, unforms, and reforms itself like protoplasm. Ultimately, it assumes a conclusive shape. However, no matter what the terms into which it has been translated, the elementary thought will still be sensed as a nucleus. Form is indigenous, although certain formal habits may accrue. Thus one finds in the same small book a poem as dry and sparse metrically as Hawk's Eye, and another, Death Goes Before Me, transforming the English language by attention to harmony of vowel pitch into a medium as fluent as that employed by Verlaine. The magpie's shadow is prefigured by lines like these from poems in The Immobile Wind. Far whispers creeping through an ancient shell. Life is in lichens that sleep as they run, and if men pass, they pass like birds with necks craning aside. Stillness is like the beating of a drum. A disillusionment which knows science and discounts reality universalized through the emotions. I have found Vico quoted as saying, "Metaphysics lifts itself above the universals. The poetical faculty must plunge itself into particulars." Ivor Winters does both, forcing the first into coherence by means of the second. Of the magpie's shadow there is little to say. It is violent friends and violent antagonists who argue viciously and futilely with "I like" and "I don't like." For myself, when I find in 28 six-syllable poems not only a complete seasonal cycle, but such a cycle with both individual and universal implications, I like. Here's one of them. No being. I bent, thin nights receding. It is impossible to classify this poetry, which is so new to us. It is as fundamental and economical as a primitive. I am thinking of certain Chippewa poems, and at the same time, with its surgically conscious introspectiveness, distinctly modern. One might say impressionism, one might say symbolism. It includes both and more. Spring rain. My doorframe smells of leaves. Fields. I did not pick a flower. Alone. I saw day's shadow strike. I should say Mr. Winters speaks for himself. Pearl Andelson. End of One Poet Speaks for Himself, a review by Pearl Andelson.
Section 48. Teacher and Critic. A review by Nelson Antrim Crawford. From Poetry, a Magazine of Verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Jennifer Beckett Wood. Teacher and Critic. On English Poetry by Robert Graves, Albert A. Knopf. There is an abundance of books which analyse poetry and of books which tell how to write poetry. Since Poe, however, few poets have explained how they write. Robert Graves does this and does it well. He gives concrete examples from his own experience as a poet and discusses the subjective experiences which he holds are the basis of a number of well-known poems not of his own composition. At the same time, this is no mere textbook on the writing of verse. The author treats of the fundamental subjective basis for poetry. He adopts largely the theory of Dr. Freud, with which I believe most practicing poets will agree. This, in brief, is his explanation. The poet, consciously or unconsciously, is always either taking in or giving out. He hears, observes, weighs, guesses, condenses, idealizes, and the new ideas troop quietly into his mind, until suddenly, every now and again, two of them violently quarrel and drag into the fight a group of other ideas that have been loitering about at the back of his mind for years. There is great excitement, noise and bloodshed, with finally a reconciliation and and drinks all around. The poet writes a tactful police report on the affair, and there is the poem. The book contains also comments on a wide variety of subjects related to poetry, ranging from the poet's dress to details of cross rhythm and resolution. The remarks are of varying merit. The discussion of vers libres, for example, is inconsequential, but Mr. Graves makes no claim to utterance ex cathedra. This is one of the few works on English verse that possess any magic of style. In this respect, it deserves a place in the honourable succession represented by Sidney, Shelley, Poe, and Eastman. Indeed, the style is one of the chief charms of the book. The fanciful humour, the aphoristic satire, and the quiet whimsicality which are present in Mr. Graves's poems are evident to an even greater extent in this prose volume. Never does he commit the common fault of the critic, taking himself too seriously. Nelson Antrim Crawford. End of section 48. Review, Teacher and Critic by Nelson Antrim Crawford.
Section 49, Asia, a review by Emanuel Carnevali from Poetry, a magazine of verse, volume 20, number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org, read by Anita Shabazian. Asia, a review by Emanuel Carnevali. Early Persian Poetry by A.J. Williams Jackson, Macmillan Company. Selections from the Rubaiyat of Hafiz, translated by a member of the Persia Society of London, John Lane. Chips of Fade and Beetle Nuts, translated by Arthur Gitterman, E.P. Dutton and Amp Company. The Garden of Bright Waters and Colored Stars, by Edward Powys Mathers, Houghton Mifflin Company. China and Japan, their literature and their art, have had of late a renaissance within another renaissance, that of our own art and literature. Discussions and imitations of Chinese and Japanese poetry have inundated the poetry magazines and publishers, and some modern poets go so far as to tell the verse librists that they should all write like the Japanese of old, or bosh to that effect. Although the discussions and imitations bore us, we stand in awe at the portentous spectacle that artistic Asia offers. This portentous spectacle would be made more magnificent by the advent of two little books by E. Powys Mathers, would be translations of folk songs and ancient and modern poems of Asia, love songs mostly. If, there is an if said poems and songs were actually of ancient and modern Asia, and not, as some scholars assure us, more or less faked. But Mr. Mathers is not just a faker, he is a poet, as the following, whether a translation or not, bears witness. I thought it was snowing flowers, but it was this young lady coming towards me. These two books, bearing such lovely titles, are full of such poems as that. Colored Stars, being the shorter, is the better book. A laudatory word should be due to every person who gives us a glimpse of the art of Asia. But sometimes this glimpse is so perverted, as in the case of the Hafiz selections and the translations we find in early Persian poetry, that our thanks are given grudgingly, if at all. This member of the Persian Society of London, translator of Hafiz, his being unnamed, is probably an apology, ought to have had one good friend to tell him to keep his hands off Hafiz. Said friend would have proved a good friend of Hafiz also, this turban and slippers ancient and venerable Turk, who, they assure us, is as great as Dante, is made up by the member of the Persia Society of London to look like the sweet singer of Michigan. And all this because the translator has taken it upon himself to render in rhyme the Rubaiyat of Hafiz. Rhyme being one too many for him. Possibly he would have done a better job had he undertaken to translate Hafiz literally and in prose. The effort wasted in frantically fishing for the rhyme might have been turned to better use in a search for the right word. But who knows? It might have turned out something like Mark Twain's translation of his own Jumping Frog from the French. It's no use. mere scribblers ought to leave the poets of other nations alone. They ought to let dead poets sleep the sleep of the just in their cool tombs. Only a poet, and a good one, may translate adequately the work of another poet. It is this fact that makes works of Arda Fitzgerald's translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, Baudelaire's translations of Poe's tales. We make the same complaint concerning Chips of Fade and Betel Nuts, except that the rhyme translations by Arthur Gitterman are graceful and attractive. Oh, when the whale lies floundering in the shoal, how all the minnows laugh to see him roll! But who knows whether the originals were merely graceful and pretty, or sheer funny, as some of these proverbs of China and India are. Who knows how much of the spirit of majestic Hindu and Chinese proverbs, how much of the mysticism of them was lost in this graceful and pretty handling, which inevitably makes the proverbs petty and levels them all. Early Persian poetry is interesting as a book of history, but if we must consider the translations included as fair examples of the work of these Persian poets, we must perforce reach the conclusion that they are a race of drivelers and doggerel makers, which cannot, of course, be true. End of Poetry, a magazine of verse, Volume 20, Number 6, September 1922, edited by Harriet Monroe.